Hey, what's up? Welcome to our viewers. I'm here in the CBS This Morning Toyota Green Room with CBS News medical contributor Dr. David Agus. Welcome.
Thank you, Vlad.
He is here to discuss growing concerns about how public genealogy databases could compromise our privacy. Investigators used online DNA databases in April to zero in on the suspected Golden State Killer. They were able to identify his potential relatives based on DNA collected at one of the crime scenes. Good to see you.
Good. It's kind of cool when you say serial killers is our topic.
Serial killers is our topic, and more importantly, it's how they're using DNA, which is unique to every single living person on the planet, to track down cold cases.
Yeah.
Just give me a little bit of when you first heard they were able to track down this killer using DNA, what did you think?
I knew it was going to happen. I mean, this is inevitable. When you have a child, right, it takes whole chunks of your DNA and chunks of your wife's DNA, and they go together, and that's what the child is. So you inherit big chunks, not individual letters. And you could trace back those chunks and see your genealogy. So we've all had friends who've done it and discovered that they were Italian instead of Irish.
Right.
But what's amazing is you put it into these databases, and then a day later you get an email from all the people who they think may be related to you, and you see you're 20% like this person, 4% like this person. And so you can imagine taking DNA of a killer and putting it into that same database. And once you identify who they're related to, you call that person up and say, which of your relatives are out there, and you can identify the killer. So when you go into that database with your DNA, you're potentially implicating a family member.
Right. And we should point out that the reason they were able to do this is the police were able to look at public databases. So
Yes.
when you go onto, for example, sites like Ancestry.com or 23andMe, everybody buys one of those little kits. You swab the inside of your mouth, you send the DNA to the Ancestry website, and the hope there is that you'll find some family members, or you'll know a little bit more about who you are, where you came from. And now the police can access those databases.
Right. So those are private databases. So presumably they need a court order to go in and take those databases. The interesting workaround, say you're a policewoman and you have DNA from a crime, you could just send it into Ancestry.com, put a fake name on it, and see who they're related to. So there's a quick workaround here to get information out of those databases. You know, I went to Ancestry.com, for example, online, and this is the terms and consents that you do for it. It's 16 pages. So first of all, if you read this, you'd be sound asleep. But I want to read to you, one part of the consent. And I'm not implicating any one company, but I think this is just the field in general. It says, you grant us a sub-licensable worldwide royalty-free license to host, store, copy, publish, distribute, provide access to, create derivative works of, and otherwise use your content.
So it gives them wide latitude.
This is your DNA.
This is your DNA. This is who you are. This is the stuff of life.
But it's not just you. It's all your family members. So when you go through a test, whether it be looking for the breast cancer gene or going to Ancestry.com, it says something about all of your family.
Yeah.
So if you're going to have this breast test, you want to talk to your parent, your sister, because it implies something about them. If you do this, you got to think about your family as a whole. And so it's a whole new way of approaching things that we got to really consider here.
So what is genetic discrimination?
So President Bush put together a bill called GINA, the Genetic Non-Discrimination Act. It had gone before Congress literally for dozens of times and always got turned down because someone would attach a bridge to it or a road to it because it was such a non-brainer.
Not a pork.
But what it means is that if I know as an employer, listen, you have a risk factor for heart disease. A heart attack costs the company $70,000. I'm going to hire her because she doesn't have that risk. So it's actually making a decision with your genetics in mind, right? These are not deterministic, these gene traits, but they tell you their probabilistic nature. What's the probability of you getting cancer and heart disease? If they're high, as a company, I say, listen, it's going to cost me money. I'm self-insured. Or you're going to miss work time. Let me take someone that doesn't have a risk for disease. It's better for my company.
But are you saying then that companies can actually also access some of these databases to learn this information, or this is...
No, this was a hypothetical.
Okay,
so when Bush put together this letter,
Right.
there's yet to be a case in the United States ever of someone being discriminated based on genetics.
But people have said,
So it's a
well, you're a
hypothetical.
smoker. I don't know, because...
Well, that's
that
not
could be-"
genetics.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, there was an amazing case last year where the AARP sued the EEOC. I love all these letters. And they said that, companies should not have their own wellness program. If CBS had a wellness program and it knew you had diabetes, but it said Norah didn't, when there's a story in London, maybe David Rhodes, the head of the news, says, I'm going to send a Norah because I don't want him to be stressed because she has a disorder. And so they said, listen, if you're in corporate wellness programs and you show up at the diabetes one, people may know you have diabetes, and that's not right. And they won. And so right now, corporate wellness programs shouldn't be part of the company. They should be separate.
So now, do you expect going forward that many police departments will be looking at some of their cold cases that they've had sitting for years and years and years, and maybe get a court order or warrant and start looking into some of these databases to figure out who they may come up with?
They are. I mean, I think they are doing that. And again, there's a workaround here.
Right.
You know, there's a rape, you could take some of that sperm, put it in that same tube that you spit into, send it to them, and then they'll run the search. And it'll say who you're similar to. And then the police officers can just call up those people and say, tell me about your relatives, and they can identify the person. So certainly, if you're a victim, this is the greatest thing in the world. We can start to identify people. At the same time, privacy, advocates are worried about this.
So I read a fascinating book years ago about how fingerprinting was for many, many years in the 19th century not considered to be a real form of evidence until finally it was, right? And so to me, it would seem that we know that fingerprints are unique to each individual. DNA, it sort of feels that if you get arrested, if you are caught because of your DNA match, what's the defense against that?
There is no defense.
There is no defense.
There are 3 billion letters with an infinite number of combinations. So if you can look at the DNA, it's a match. It is you. There's no way around it. You could say someone put your DNA
sure.
there. Someone took your hair out of your comb and put it on the
how
scene.
It got there is one thing, but we
should be writing this down.
I know.
This is a good drama we'll come up with here.
we can write a really interesting crime novel about this. And you mentioned the privacy concerns that some people have. What should people know? Just regular folks on the street who decide that they want to share their DNA with some of these sites. What should they think about before?
The average person, the medical doctor, I ain't going to read this.
Right,
I mean, I started doing it. My eyes glaze over, and I'm kind of leaning backwards here. And so what you need to realize is that DNA is your identity. It's very important. When you put information in these companies, it's the potential to get out there. It's the potential to use not just against you, but your family members. And maybe that's okay with you, but you have the right to make that decision for yourself. We treat DNA as a society different than everything else, right? You go and you try to get a mortgage in your home. You give them every bit of financial information you've ever had. I mean, they know everything you do, and you don't think twice about it. But if I tell you your DNA may be shared and someone can have access to, you get up in arms. And so we do view DNA differently, and we have to realize that. And so to me, it's the transparency. I really, I hate it. Every company does this, these 16 pages. And to me, in a sense, it pisses me off because people don't understand it or read it. I want legible, clear transparency to say what's going to happen with this DNA, and what you could expect or what could happen, and then you can make the right decision for yourself. Maybe you don't care. Maybe you want to democratize your information, and to you it's not matter. But you may have a cousin George you're worried about, and I don't want to get George in trouble.
Well, I think that's the struggle that everybody is facing right now. Some people will say, well, I don't really mind about my DNA or even sharing some of my, for example, movements on social media. I don't care. I haven't done anything wrong. It's not a big deal. But what is sort of more opaque is that some of these companies don't really care about you. Yes, you're open, and so they know what you're going to do, where you're going to shop. They want to know about your son and your daughter and your grandparents and your loved ones, and what they want to be able to track them. And that's a little bit more disconcerting because you're giving up yourself, but you're not giving up extended family members. No, at least when you're signing some of these consent forms.
But yeah, it goes very, very deep. If you had the test to see if you had the gene for breast cancer or not, it's deterministic for 85, 88% chance in your lifetime of getting breast cancer. And if you turn out positive, that implies something about your sister. She has a 50% chance of having it. About your mother, about your father, about your children, about your cousins. And so do you consent them before you have the test? And so we as a society have to start to have these discussions because I think they're critical.
Yeah, they really are. Dr. David Agus, it's really interesting to talk to you about this.
Interesting or scary?
It's a little bit of both. It's a little bit of both because, on one hand, like I said, it's interesting. For years and years, because of the fact that my parents were divorced when I was very young, my paternal grandmother died in childbirth, so I never knew her, giving birth to my dad. My mother's father, my maternal grandparents' maternal grandfather, she never knew. So the knowledge of my family is really only extended to my mother and my dad. I don't know anything about who or where I came from other than family legends and family myths. And so for years I thought I want to put my DNA into one of these databases and at least get some connections. In fact, I have a cousin who's visiting here tomorrow who's part of the Scandinavian wing of my family, and she's not that distantly related. She is the granddaughter of my great uncle, so it's a second cousin basically. And yet I don't know a lot about her, and so it's just interesting to me that you can use this database to figure out who you are. On the other hand, I'm certainly worried about what it could mean for my privacy. I haven't done anything wrong. I haven't, they were not going to find me as the Black Dahlia murderer, but you know.
Well, listen, it affects my family very differently. My father-in-law is Maury Povich. So Maury's made a career on saying, are they the father? Are they not the father? And it's a big issue, listen, what happened 5 generations ago? You didn't know that part of your family is, Native American. Part of your family is. You can find a lot from this. You can find out about the behavior of people, generations past. There's a lot of information sitting in your own DNA. Does it deserve to be liberated?
And this is sort of a question about just these sites in general, are you, as a doctor, can you say that with some certainty that they kind of get it right when they come back with the results?
That's a very important question. I mean, in all disclosure, I helped develop some of these technologies, and I will tell you they're not perfect.
Okay.
No question about it. So your genealogy is not perfect. And anybody could say exactly where you're from. They could say you have traits consistent with somebody who spent time in Ireland. But there's a lot of mixing and matching that happened over the generations. That Irish person may have gone to China and had relations with a woman, and so there may be some Chinese. There's a lot of mixing and matching. It's not pure and it's not perfect science.
But you are perfect, Dr. David Agus, and we're happy to have you.
Thank you very much. Believe me.
We all do. We all do. All right. Thank you very much for being with us in the Toyota Green Room here at CBS This Morning. We appreciate it. We are signing off. We'll see you the next time. Thanks so much.
Bye-bye.